Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm Lee from What Users Do, and I've been spending the last 9 years convincing people to spend more money on user experience, both user research and usability testing. I think Drake sums it up quite well. Probably the first person to quote Drake at a UX conference. And I'm going to talk through some of the enemies that we face as UXers and how we need to overcome them. Earlier, I think somebody asked how many people have done usability testing or do usability testing, and I was quite saddened to see only about 15 hands go up in the room. Should be the majority of us, so I guess we have enemies we need to destroy. The first enemy, I believe, are actually A/B testing tools. Mentioned a number of times today already. Why on earth would Maximizer and Optimizely, or even your own homegrown A/B testing tool, be possibly an enemy of UX? Well, it's because on their own, and they are used on their own in some organizations, they're not potentially giving you any UX insight. They're telling you which design treatment is performing better, but without UX insight, without the way that ShopDirect are doing it, who are basing their hypotheses upon usability studies, it's going to tell you very little. I talk to organizations who believe they have UX covered and research covered because they run a lot of A/B tests, for example. And that's a problem, because you'll waste your time. If you think just implementing Optimizely and running lots of A/B tests is going to be the answer to UX, you're wrong. It's going to be the answer to finding out whether the ideas you have are going to have any impact whatsoever on your site visitors. The best way to do this is to start with identify where there is a problem, which you can use Google Analytics for, to then run some usability tests to determine why that is a problem and where there are points of friction on your site, and then to use Optimizely or Maximizer or similar to determine what the best fix is, and then just keep cycling around like this. And you'll have the metrics that you can then rely upon in Google Analytics to justify running further usability tests. Design agencies are your enemy. When I started What Users Do 9 years ago, both myself and everybody I spoke to said, you will have loads of design agencies as customers, because design agencies will be really into usability testing and ensuring that they provide and produce the best possible user experience they can for their clients. Guess what? Most of them don't, and most of them still don't, and that's a shame. But they all have office dogs. The reason, but what's interesting is that it's usually the larger ones that are worse. The larger the agency, the more diverse they are, the worse they are. The less digital expertise they have. That's what we found. Very, very large agencies working for very, very large brands sometimes call us. Hi, is that what users do? Yes, it is. Hi, how can I help you? Yeah, we're working for a really large brand, household brand, and we're about to launch a new website, and somebody said we should do a usability test. Can I have one of those, please? And that's how it goes. That's how the conversation goes. And this agency that's supposed to be amazing in implementing best practice just thinks it knows best, but doesn't know enough to just even test something that's developing for users. So the larger they are, the worse they are. And a checklist, if you wanted to evaluate an agency as you appoint them, would be to determine, one, if they've got an office dog. I would say there's a high correlation between a lack of user research and belief in UX if an agency has an office dog. Yep. Are they too large? Are they not really digital expertise and thus don't get it at all? And you can ask them, how many researchers do you have? If it's a smaller agency, and there are some good agencies in the Northwest who are doing UX who don't necessarily have dedicated researchers, and you can just ask them how they test what they design with users. This is Jacob Nielsen. There's a joke I was trying to work on, which was to try and call him Dracob Nielsen, to tie it back to the... I'm glad I didn't. When I interviewed Jacob, who invented all of this stuff, a lot of usability testing, the usability testing approach, when I interviewed him a couple of years ago, we talked about what's it like being at a large organization and wanting to introduce something like usability testing or user research. How do you go about it? Because you're not going to change the culture overnight. And yet, I still see people appointed in roles like the first UX role or the first researcher role in a large organization and try and implement the discipline across everything, every project. It doesn't work. Your best bet is to try and slowly, one project at a time, and in manageable chunks, build an internal case study or internal case studies that are based upon evidence from smaller usability tests that you can use to prove to other parts of the organization that this approach works. Look for low-hanging fruit, something where you know you're going to be able to make a difference, something where you will be able to share a metric improvement at the end of it, and you can do it for free. You can run usability testing for free by running guerrilla tests or by signing up to a free trial of what users do, apparently. I'm going to get more controversial after this one, but asking your users is a real enemy of UX. I've taken from a site here some questions that users were asked. So this is one of those exit survey things you get. You know, when you've been to a site and you either get what you want or you don't, and this thing pops up. I couldn't quite bring myself to scroll to the end, but it looked like it was heading toward 30 questions. And no reward for completing those questions either, but these were the types of questions. Things like, how does this site compare to your idea of an ideal website? Rate it. Please rate how well the product descriptions provide answers to your questions. Rate it. Question number 27. How did you get to this question? Haven't you got a like? No, that isn't the question. The question is, thinking about why you came to, and then the name of the brand today, please rate your experience of the website for the following. God, I can't wait to do this. The availability of the specific products, brackets, you were looking for on the site. And it goes on and on and on. So it's a good idea to ask people questions, if you do want to ask people questions, that they can actually answer things like, if I was implementing, and a lot of our customers do this, if I was implementing an on-site survey, I'd try and keep it to 2 questions, rather than 30 odd that are really difficult to answer. What were you trying to do today? People generally know why they're at a website, what they're trying to achieve. It may change over time as they read things and learn things, find stuff or don't find stuff, but generally they're there for a purpose. What was the purpose of your visit? What were you trying to do today? Don't give them a drop-down box. Don't do that. As tempting as it may be, because then it'll all get categorized and I won't have to do much work. You'd probably say in an unusual accent. No. You want them to type in the free text. At least start off with that. And then take that free text that people type in and examine it and correlate it to your second question, which is, could you do it? Yes or no? That can be a drop down. Yes or no? Maybe you're not sure. Maybe just yes or no. Go down, have a look. Identify where there were quite a few no's and try and figure out what it was people were trying to do. Now then, see if there's any clues in analytics as to what parts of the site might be affected by that, what conversion metrics or other metrics might be affected, and then use those things that people are trying to do, turn those into like missions or goals that you can set in usability tests for people to then follow, which will reveal the why of their behavior. So we're back into that triangle again of using these usability tests to identify why, A/B testing to see which of your design fixes is best at fixing it, and then back up to Google Analytics to justify doing the whole thing in the first place. This is quite controversial, that we, UXers, are the #1 enemy of doing UX properly. Anybody agree? Okay. All right, I better expand then, hadn't I? So, we are passionate about this. We want to do more usability testing. We want to be, who thinks getting closer to users is a bad thing? Okay, we want to get closer to users. We know that's a good thing. We know that becoming more customer-centric is good. Understanding them, having an innate understanding of them is really good. But most of our colleagues aren't that bothered, to be honest, and certainly the more senior colleagues might pay lip service to customer centricity, but they're not going to, just because they pay lip service to it, say, oh yeah, build a lab, run some remote sessions, go and get closer to users. Of course they're not. And I think the reason that we're an enemy is that is because we often talk about our passion rather than scare organizations into action. I think, and I know, that a better sales tactic for getting people to invest and spend money on UX is to actually scare them into doing it. So we need to start saying scary things to them rather than, I really want to spend some time with some of our customers, it's a good thing to do. Things like, our sales could drop off a cliff if we don't check this new design with users, just like happened with M&S. I don't want to lose any customers because of a simple design issue that we're not picking up because we're so close to it. Talk about the problem. Discuss that with them before necessarily even starting to talk about what the solution might be as well. This is a well-known sales technique. If you've read Spin Selling, which is a very, very famous and popular book, and it's nothing to do with spin in terms of political spin, it's just an acronym. It says, and one of the main lessons in there is to talk about pain with people that you're trying to convince and sell to so that the status quo becomes almost unbearable. I'd say probably rather than, if I was struggling in an organization to sell in UX or the idea of usability testing or anything like that, the next book I would read would be Spin Selling, the first 3 chapters, rather than something about how to create great websites. So remember to build up the problem and discuss the problem with your stakeholders and the budget holders, and talk about the potential risks of not doing any testing, rather than necessarily coming along with a case study that says, this brand increased sales by 10%. It seems like a great thing to do, but every provider, every supplier will have case studies on their sites, and we have them, and we continue to have them, that are all very positive. Fear is a better motivator. So, to summarize, starting at the top, let's build up the problem with our stakeholders of not doing any testing to help you sell internally. Don't go straight to the solution. You can use on-site surveys, but ask people what they can answer, and you can use the answers from that to generate great usability tests, and very relevant ones. Try and build up internal case studies. Start small, look for low-hanging fruit. If an agency's got more dogs than researchers, be really careful at pointing them. Just do that quick count, and you can rule them out. And use the A/B testing tools very wisely, as our friends at ShopDirect do, alongside qualitative research methods as well. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but you can go and get a free test from our site to help you along the way. Thank you for your time.